Hello everyone, you're listening to Alternative Revelations with Linda Emmanuel. This is podcast number 25, all about how to protect your pet from cancer and disease. And I have a special guest today. It's a friend of mine who I've known since 2013. Her name is Pat, and she's really special. And she's going to tell you a story about how she got her cat well from cancer. And also, I have another friend by the name of Sheilah Mitchell who will be joining me on the podcast and talk about how her experience is with cancer and disease and her pets, how she dealt with it. And she has a lot of suggestions for you how to protect your dog from cancer and disease. So before I get started, I have to say this disclaimer that these podcasts are for informational purposes only. I am not a doctor, nor am I a licensed practitioner. Therefore, I cannot give medical advice. And again, these podcasts are for informational only. And I will turn the mic over to Pat, who's sitting right next to me, and she's going to tell you her story.
Thanks, Linda, for inviting me onto your show. Glad to be here and tell my story. I want to tell you about the cat that I adopted from a no-kill shelter, and knew it was a special cat from the very beginning, and was healthy in all respects except that he developed a tumor in his eye, in his lower eye, and it was growing and getting more concerning. So I took my cat to my veterinarian, who looked at it and immediately said that yes, it was a tumor, and immediately referred me to the veterinary referral center here in St. Louis, where all the specialists are for animals. There's only one ophthalmologist in the city who has her practice there at the center. So I went to see her with my cat, and after several tests and observation, they told me that yes, again, it was in fact a tumor, but also told me that there was nothing they could do about it, and that it would probably get worse over time, and that eventually I would need to have the eye removed of my cat. But then they said, oh, but don't worry about it, because cats can be just fine with only one eye, which I thought was totally unacceptable.
So Pat, you're doing really great. I'd like to mention that trauma triggers cancer and disease in animals and people, and most probably the cat, little Merlin, right? His name's Merlin. He probably had a trauma in the center when he was picked up or when he was adopted. Living in a shelter is very, very traumatic for a cat. And I'm going to give the microphone right back to Pat, and she's going to continue where she left off with the vet that was an ophthalmologist vet.
So after I left the veterinary center and was very disappointed with the outcome, I talked to my friend Linda, and she told me about a product called mild silver protein that is used to treat cancers. And I mixed the mild silver protein in water and created eye drops for my cat. He was not the easiest to give eye drops to, but I was able to put a couple drops in his eyes once a day, and he, over time, showed dramatic improvement in his eye. The tumor actually went away to the point where the eye looked totally normal. And I think this was only over maybe a period of a couple months of doing this. Subsequent to that, I took Merlin to my regular veterinary for his physical and checkup, and they did a extensive view of his eye with one of those scopes, and could not find any trace of a tumor in his eye. It was totally gone, and that was now a few years ago, and the tumor has never come back.
So I have a question. Did your vet, your regular vet, did he or she say anything about the tumor being gone? Because your vet was the original one that saw the tumor, right? And then and referred you on to a specialist?
Yes, the vet was totally surprised and amazed that the tumor was no longer there and was curious what I had done. And I explained to him that I put mild silver protein drops in the cat's eyes. Of course, he had never heard of this product before and thought it was most interesting that there's a product out there that they were not even aware of that would actually work. So I think that in the process, I actually taught the vet something that he didn't know before.
So Pat, I thank you for being on the podcast and sharing Merlin's story with us. It's really nice when you can do real life testimonials because, I could be making things up, but seeing is believing. Little Merlin's totally happy and healthy now. And I'm just going to let you say some parting words before you go.
Well, as I said earlier, I knew Merlin was a special cat from the beginning and know that once he's healed, he will be healthy and happy for the rest of his life and expect him to live a long one.
So that's just another story it's a happy story about how somebody got their pet well, but there's also a lot of other tragic stories. And again, trauma triggers cancer and disease in humans and animals. So you really have to watch those traumas when your pet goes through a trauma. You really have to watch for cancer or disease to appear. I'm going to give you another story about trauma, how trauma triggered. And the reason, I better explain, the reason trauma triggers disease is this. Mycoplasma, which is the most common cause of cancer and disease, is triggered by trauma because the body suddenly becomes acidic. And the organism monitors three things in your body: your pH, your immune system, and the oxygen level in your body. And most of the time, microorganisms such as mycoplasma awaken from traumas. So this is another story, but this is tragic about trauma. My sister had a dog, Jack Russell, and he had a bad habit of chasing horses. He wasn't supposed to, but he just did it anyway. And one day the horse kicked him in the head. A couple months later, maybe 3, 4, or 5 months later, Henry got a big tumor on his leg. Well, I knew exactly what triggered this was the trauma. And my sister, she took the dog to the vet, and the vet, just like the previous vet with Pat, they don't know about what really causes cancer and disease. Veterinary schools are just like allopathic medical schools. They do not teach about that cancer and disease are infections. So back to the story. The vet removed that tumor and told her, well, the cancer's all gone. It's out of the body. I got it all. Well, I knew better, that unless it was systemic, it was in Henry's body still. And sure enough, 6 months later, Henry died. And another incident about trauma and cats. I met a lady whose cat had diabetes. And I asked her, did your cat have a trauma before she got sick? And the lady said, yes, well, I got this dog. And the dog terrified the cat. And I finally had to get rid of the dog. And then right after that, the cat got diabetes. And mycoplasma in animals can cause hormonal imbalance. And the animal can get diabetes. Now I'm going to mention some more protocols that you can use on your pet for cancer. Dogs, cats, and animals are pretty sensitive to alkaloids. You cannot really give alkaloids to a cat or a dog. And the only thing you can really give a cat and a dog or a bird is mild silver protein. And the other two protocols that I know that you can use on a pet is carnivora. And I did a podcast on carnivora. You might want to listen to that again. And the third protocol are frequency, like Rife machines, are what's called Best Zapper. It's you're very limited for pets and children. And by the way, children, you cannot give a child an alkaloid product. The only product that I know of that's safe for children is mild silver protein, carnivora, frequency, and garlic. It's about it for a child. So I have a second guest. Her name is Sheilah Mitchell. She's a good friend, and she's really knowledgeable about how to protect your pet from getting cancer and disease. And Sheilah's sitting right next to me, and I'm going to hand her the microphone. Welcome, Sheilah.
Thank you, Linda. It's a joy to be here, especially to help people and help their pets. Our pets are so important to us. They give so much love and so much dedication, and they're such a joy. I've learned what to do, and I've learned what not to do. One of the most important messages that I have is you must be aware of the fact that a lot of gardeners are spraying these toxic weed killers, like maybe Roundup. I understand there's like 11 more products they have that have been advertised on television. And if your dog walks in that, gets it on their paws, and then they go home and lick their paws, they can get cancer. And I did have a dog that got cancer and died at 7 years old, and it was so tragic. It was so painful. She was adorable and so loving and sweet. Also, I learned from her name was Allie, and I learned that you must be careful what kind of bowl you're feeding your pet in. It must be a stainless steel or a porcelain, not that toxic rubber and plastic and all those man-made bowls. And you also need to be very aware of what kind of shampoos you use, what kind of conditioners. Make sure it's non-toxic. And the food, oh my goodness, I learned the hard way with Allie passing the importance of organic kale, chopping it up, giving it to my dogs in their food, and organic zucchini. Find out as many of the most organic, healthy foods that have chlorophyll in them. You know, I haven't studied dogs or cats' colons, but I will bet you, if we researched it, and you're such a great researcher, Linda, we would discover that the animal's colon needs certain nutritional things to keep the colon clear, keep the cancer away, keep the salmonella away. You know, got great exercise and massage. And I learned from the ears too. It's really important. There's a company that Ellen DeGeneres owns. I'm trying to think of the name of it, but they have an ear wash, and it's got oil of clove in it, and it makes the dog's ears smell so good. And my dogs, after I learned about that ear wash, never got ear infections. It totally eliminated ear infections because of the clove oil. And I'm just learning every day. We're learning empirical knowledge from experience. I feel really bad that I didn't know more of this before Allie got cancer. You also need to be careful of any rat poison that you might have in your house. And I've been told that this pine cleanser that you use to clean your house with, we all know the name of it. It's with pine and oil, and it's very toxic to children and animals. Oh, and there's a video you can search probably on the internet that Olivia Newton-John, I think, is the one that did it years ago when she had a baby, and she did it with another actress, and it was all about household hazards. And I work with the Hippocrates Health Institute in West Palm Beach, Florida, and they all have been teaching forever to be very careful about what kind of toxins you have in your home. And of course, now we're learning about the 5G and the dangerous smart meters that they're putting on our apartments and our homes. So, as you say in your podcast, Linda, do the research. Don't be blinded. Don't have your head in the sand and not learn from others' experience. And I think we were talking earlier about empirical knowledge. the highest form of knowledge is from experience. So with Allie in particular, watching her suffer through that cancer and die was a major way for me to get my PhD in learning how to avoid cancer in your animal. Thank you so much, Linda, for inviting me. It's really been a pleasure to be here with you, and I learn from you all the time. Thank you so much. I hope to be invited back.
You're welcome, Sheilah. Well, that ends this interview, and the next I'm going to start talking about what protocols you can give your pet. And thank you, Sheilah and Pat. Pat's long gone, but thank you, Pat, if you're listening to this podcast later on. So again, I'll just wrap it up that mild silver protein is the best way to protect your animal, the safest way. It's non-toxic to people, pets, animals, birds, etc. You can buy mild silver protein on Amazon. Also, in the last podcast, I forgot to mention that you can give your pet diatomaceous earth to rebuild their joints. It's very healthy for them. Now, as far as the mild silver protein, I'm not really sure if I'm going to start selling mild silver protein again. I do have a large quantity, but I do not have a business anymore of selling it. But I do sell it to people under certain circumstances. So I really do like to hear from people, how they're doing, if they've used the silver, if it got them well. I like to hear some positive stories. Everybody likes a happy ending. And the secret behind keeping your pets safe from cancer and disease is knowledge. Knowledge to know what to do, because I don't think we can really trust our vets, our allopathic doctors. They are trained medically by the system, and they really don't know what causes cancer and disease. So we have to educate ourselves and realize that cancer and disease are infections, and they are systemic. And just because you remove a tumor does not mean the cancer germ is gone. So again, knowledge is the key. And my next podcast is a really interesting subject. It's going to be about azomite, and this was really a fun subject to research, and I call it the poor man's mineral. So until next time, good night and God bless.